a completely different set of questions to ask you now, and it's just to you. And I'm afraid it's on the very difficult area of anti-Semitism. The IHRA, the definition of anti-Semitism, it's been endorsed and adopted by the main political parties, the government, Crown Prosecution Service, College of Policing, and all major Jewish community organisations, including the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism and the Community Security Trust. There's nothing to stop the NEU executive from adopting the definition. John Lopez, a former NEU rep, said, and I quote, "I felt I had no choice to leave the union, which isolated me as a Jewish pro-Israel teacher. I spent close to 2 years trying to get the NEU to adopt the IHRA definition so Jewish NEU members can feel safer, as well as writing letters with others to Educate magazine, which were ignored." Why does the NEU think it knows better, and why do you as yet refuse to adopt the IHRA definition? And why won't you adopt it and use it as a starting point to address issues within your member body?
All right. Well, I think Mr. Lopez, I would really like him to rejoin the union, and I've written to several Jewish members recently saying there's definitely a very strong place for them in this union, for people who see Israel as the homeland of a nation, who see it as a refuge of last resort, who see it as a response to the Holocaust. There is a place for people with those views in our union.
Why not adopt the IHRA?
In the union. And Mr. Lopez has put his motion through, his branch of Barnet supported that motion, and it went through our democratic process, and it wasn't prioritized for discussion.
But as a leadership, why not adopt it? Given that so many other organisations have, including the Labour Party and many others.
That is an option that's open to us.
Why haven't you done it?
Well, because we haven't even discussed it actually. But
it seems very odd that most other organisations like yours have adopted it. And
we are very definitely a union that is working very hard against anti-Semitism. We are currently planning training on anti-Semitism. We've discussed.
Well, I'm going to come on to that. Okay, I'm going to come on to that then. We know that there has been general concerns that the NEU stance on the conflict between Israel and Hamas was unbalanced, with some JFS staffers alleging that, from the Jewish Free School, alleging that the NEU failed to condemn Hamas. We know that over 100 Jewish teachers have left your union, the NEU, over anti-Semitism, over 100, and because of these concerns. 25 teachers have left the NEU from the Jewish Free School. Why do you think these members have resigned from the union, and what do you need to do to convince these teachers otherwise? And what have you personally done to address anti-Jewish racism within the union?
So I've written to those members who've left, and in the terms that I've just spoken with you about, and I've addressed that in those terms with our national executive, with our branch secretaries. The characterization of the demonstrations has been around the dispute between Israel and Hamas. I slightly contest. We started getting involved in those demonstrations, and I personally spoke at the demonstrations, and they were about the evictions of Palestinian families from Sheikh Jarrah. Now, those evictions of Palestinian families from Sheikh Jarrah were condemned by the British government. They were condemned by the United Nations. The UN raised the question that they might be.
I'm going to come on to the demonstration. I'm asking you about the fact that 100 Jewish teachers have left the NEU because of anti-Semitism, and I've received some documentation. I mean, let me come on to. Basically, the unions, the Jewish members of your union feel that the union support is secondary to its campaigns in terms of criticising the state of Israel for one action or another.
Well, that's not true, and that's why I've written in the terms I have to Jewish members who have.
So let's take Ewood.
Therefore, we did raise this. It's really relevant that the demonstration was about Sheikh Jarrah.
Okay.
So in the statements that we put out, we had said before the bombing was over that Hamas and the Israeli government should both stop the bombings. We said that. When I spoke at the demonstrations, I said that.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome that the bombs have stopped.
I'm going to come on to the demonstration in a minute, but Ewa Jesowicz, I may be pronouncing the name wrongly, but she's sadly infamous for defacing the walls of the Warsaw Ghetto with the slogan "Free Gaza and Palestine." organised anti-Semitism training within the NEU this year. Who decided to deliver the content of the sessions? And the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism have noted that sessions were led by 2 activists from a fringe organisation called Judas. Why did you choose a controversial fringe group to do this when you could have used many mainstream Jewish organisations from the Board of Deputies, Jewish Leadership Council, and other organisations?
Robert, can I say I really welcome these questions, and I would like an opportunity to talk with you in more detail about them. But so to give you a potted version of this question, our Black Members Organising Forum in the Northwest, we seek to engage our members in all areas of the country, and we have an organising forum of Black members in the Northwest. We allocate staff to work with those organising forums to help them, and Eva Jasivovich was attached to that particular organising forum. They wanted a session of events on racism. They wanted to look at the NEU's anti-racist framework. They wanted to look at Islamophobia. They wanted to look at anti-Semitism. And they started with quite an intellectual, in some cases, quite far away from the immediate. And they wanted to look at it in that sort of intellectual, the history of these things sort of way. And Eva did a very good job of sourcing the sort of people that group wanted.
Well, someone who put graffiti on the walls of the Warsaw Ghetto, you think did a very good job. You think that's somebody well suited to teach about organising anti-Semitism training? Someone who defaces the Warsaw Ghetto.
She didn't teach about it. As you'd know,
she organised. You just said she did a good job. She organised anti-Semitism training within the NEU.
Taught it. She did not teach it.
She organised. Did she or did she not organise anti-Semitism training within the NEU this year?
She sourced the people at the request of the Black members. But
okay. I think someone who's defaced the Warsaw Ghetto, a place that I've been to see.
So you're raising that, and it's really important that you allow me to say something about that. Because the action that Eva took at that point, that the member of staff took at that point in 2010, was completely wrong. We didn't know about it when we employed her. We didn't know about it till 2018. When we did know about it, we met with her immediately at a very senior level in the union with her union rep. We discussed the fact that that action was absolutely wrong, that defacing a Holocaust memorial was wrong, that drawing an equivalency between the Israeli government and the Nazis was wrong. We went through with her that we weren't saying those things because we thought they might cause bad publicity or because that they were at variance with the IHRA definition, but because we believed them to be wrong in absolute terms. They were wrong. We discussed that with her. I won't say more about our internal disciplinary processes. We discussed those with her at that time. She had apologized for them before that time. She repeated that apology at that moment, and I believe in redemption. And I think that Eva does a good job working for our union. She's apologized for those actions which were wrong.
Well, you talked about the demonstrations earlier. On the 22nd of May, you addressed a crowd rife with anti-Semitic placards saying that Jews are Christ killers and will strike again, that Hamas are freedom fighters, that Israeli Jews are Nazis or committing a Holocaust. You failed to condemn them, yet you spoke at that rally. Further to this, Louise Regan, the NEU's national officer, organised an anti-Israel demonstration in Nottingham on the 15th of June. A speaker at that rally also spoke in support of Hamas and supported resistance by any means necessary. I mean, do you believe it's appropriate for you to speak at rallies where there are anti-Semitic chants and placards and support for those who support acts of terrorism, whatever one's view is about the Israeli and Middle East conflict?
I condemn all acts of anti-Semitism.
So why speak at such an event?
Wherever I see them.
Why you said nothing at that event, yet these placards were everywhere?
They weren't everywhere because I didn't see them.
Well, they were all over TV, BBC, they were all over the television. I saw them, and many other people saw them. Your Jewish members, the 100 who've resigned, saw them.
You can see them in TV. Yeah, I've subsequently seen some of them on TV, but the vast majority of placards on that demonstration were not anti-Semitic. There were hundreds of members of my union on those demonstrations. Young Muslim members of the union, teachers, teaching assistants, support staff, mental health counsellors that I spoke to on that demonstration. On the demonstration, on the demonstration, I made a point of saying we are all here in our diversity against all forms of racism, against all forms of Islamophobia, and against all forms of anti-Semitism.
But when did you
that line from my
criticised in that
line from my speech was the most applauded line of my speech.
In that demonstration which you went to,
at the demonstration.
In that demonstration which you went to, which had awful anti-Semitic tropes and placards, not once did you acknowledge that the schools in across the border from Gaza and the Israeli town of Sderot and other places in Israel have closed to balloon and rocket attacks, and the need for bomb shelters in playgrounds and the trauma those children experience. Would it not been more fair of you to acknowledge that there has been tragedy on both sides of this awful conflict, rather than speaking at a demonstration and, in essence, making sure that most Jewish members of the NEU feel completely isolated and ignored?
So, I mean, I'm proud of speaking at that demonstration. All three of the demonstrations that I spoke at, I am proud of it. The only way to peace is through justice. The evictions at Sheikh Jarrah, the incursions into the mosque are betrayals of justice, and they make peace a two-state solution, a one-state solution, they make it further away. The UK government criticised them. The UN criticised them. I was right to be there. And, you know, I've been criticised before. I've been criticised by members of the Conservative Party before for being involved in anti-apartheid activities. And I was proud to be involved in anti-apartheid activities, and I'm proud to be involved in these activities. Now, you've attacked Louise Regan. You've attacked Louise Regan, and I want to say something in Louise's defence, because she is a fantastic member of my union and a supporter of the Palestinians. And after there were anti-Semitic attacks in Barnet, the day after the first of those large demonstrations, when some people disgracefully drove through Barnet shouting anti-Semitic slogans, Louise was one of the very first people on Facebook condemning those actions and saying that anti-Semites have no place in the solidarity movement.
And yet spoke in this rally where people were supporting Hamas at the same rally, spoke at a rally. So just to conclude this line of question before I pass to my colleague Ian Mearns, or Tom Hunt if he's online. Just to conclude, you haven't yet adopted the IHRA. You've very sadly, given that many other similar organisations, thank God, have adopted that thing. You've had 100 Jewish members leave who feel that that the NEU is a hostile environment. You've spoken at very controversial demonstrations where placards, anti-Jewish placards are put up saying the Jews are Christ killers. Do you really feel that the NEU is safe for Jewish people? Because I can't see it from where I'm standing here or sitting here. And it seems to me, as David Baddiel wrote in his recent book, that as far as the NEU is concerned, Jews don't count.
I don't think David Baddiel did mention the NEU.
No, I'm using the title of his book to sum up the way Jewish people feel about why the 100 people have left your union and the way they feel about it.
I'm just correcting you that he didn't say that in his book. And
I didn't say he said that. I was using
you made it sound like he did.
Well, I was using the word to describe. He says Jews don't count because they seem to be, in terms of your union, there's clearly a hostile environment.
Jewish people,
that's why 100 Jews have left. Jewish members have left.
Absolutely count in our union, and we want those 100 people to rejoin. There are many more Jewish people who haven't left our union because they see that we are a union committed to opposing all forms of racism and Islam.
Except when it comes to anti-Semitism. Except when it comes to anti-Semitism.
Absolutely.
Then you turn a blind eye. That's why you don't adopt the IHRA.
That is a disgraceful slur on me and my union.
All the evidence I presented to you, it's pretty clear.
We are supporting Jewish members at the moment who've been subject of anti-Semitic attacks.
Not from all the accounts that I've seen.
It is a disgraceful slur that you should be ashamed of.
Well, I think I've presented some pretty serious evidence to show that you've let Jewish members down in your organisation. I'll pass to Ian Mearn now. Thank you, Ian. Ian, you're on mute.
conversation.
Okay, well, thank you, Kevin. I hope I'll have a cup of coffee with you, even with our row about the Jewish community and the feelings about. And I do hope that you will adopt the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism as a union. I think it would be a very important step forward and would reassure a lot of Jewish members. And perhaps you'd have less leaving if you did that. And I hope very much that you can do that this year as a union. Thank you very much also.
We're engaging with the Board of Deputies, with the Community Safety Trust. We're talking to them about the training that we're putting on anti-Semitism. We've said that we'll look at all the examples in the IHRA definition around that. That's not quite the same as adopting it, but we engage with it. We understand there are sensitivities and emotions around all of those things that really matter.
Well, all I can say is the reason why I asked the questions I did, I've been contacted significantly by members of the Jewish community and your members who feel, I don't want to rehash old ground because we've debated it quite fiercely.
Just adopt it.
Session. But I do believe that you should adopt it. I mean, if your campaign is against anti-racism, why not adopt the IHR definition of anti-Semitism?
As I say, the IHRA definition was.
If it's good enough for the Labour Party, it's good enough for you. We're going to have. It looks like we're going to have lots of cups of coffee, and I look forward to that. But I very much hope you adopt it. As I say, I thank you at least for being prepared to debate fiercely on these issues and be subject to sustained questioning. And I also thank all the